today I'm going to go over a little bit about the new upcoming control system. My disclaimer, I do not have any insider information on this. It's basically going to talk a little bit about the new radio that is already out, that's available for teams, as well as talk a little bit about the RFP, request for proposal, that FRC has put out that is going to be for the upcoming control system for the next few years. All right, quick intro. Who am I? My name is Brian Charles Jr. I'm one of the lead mentors for Team 930. This will be my 16th season in FRC. I was in First Lego League before that, so long time in First. In my day job, I am Innovation R&D Manager at TAPCO. We make smart traffic products. So if you ever see a blinky stop sign, that came from TAPCO. So quick overview, like I mentioned, we'll talk through first just a brief recap of the current control system so we can see what's changing. That'll be the new radio, which we've got here for 2025, as well as the RFP for the new control system. And then we'll circle things back to just what does that really mean for teams as we move into the future. So pulled one of the screenshots that's available through FRC documentation. This is the Rev version of their control system. So highlighting the major parts, I will not talk through every single piece here, but we've got what FRC refers to as the mobile robot controller, aka your Robo Rio. That's your brain of the robots running all the code. That's what we'll touch on later with the new control system. There's the high current actuator power distribution, also known as just the power board. How do you get power around to your robot? Featured here is the Rev power distribution hub. The CTRE power distribution board is also still legal for teams to use. You've got your motor controllers there, Sparks, Talons, Victors. Some are built into the motors, like the Falcons or the Krakens. We've got pneumatics. Here's the Rev pneumatics hub. And then your wireless, which currently shown here in 2024 was the OM 5P AC radio, the little white box that everybody had on their robots this year. So talking a little bit about the new radio that's here. So we do have one of these. I know a handful of other teams here today have used these radios. So the VH109 is developed by Vivid Hosting. They've got some connections with Qualcomm, so some smart people that know a lot about wireless radios. Sold by West Coast Products, so this is available. Teams can go to West Coast Products and buy one of these radios today. It was first used at, kind of beta tested at Chezzy Champs, an off-season event out in California last fall for the 60 or so teams that were there. It was a good event to put it through its paces and see if it holds up to the rigors of a bunch of teams going through competition with all the network traffic and everything. And then FRC did announce they were going to use it at the start of the build season. They announced a plan to use it for the 2024 FRC Championship. So the 600 teams that were there just a couple months ago all ran these, and it went really smoothly. Teams, I think there was only a handful of issues that happened with it, and they were very easy to mitigate. And so, by and large, especially with rolling it out at Champs, it has been battle tested now. So this will be rolling out to all the teams starting for next season, starting for 2025. Yes. That will be part of, I presume, given all the teams in the kit of parts, that every team's got one, and then that will be the only legal radio to be used. Yep. So touching just a little bit about what is going on the radio here. As you can see, it's a nice black brick. Not the most flashy, but it's pretty powerful. So a few things, some nice parts. It does have 4 Ethernet ports. The current radio only has 2, and really only 1 that is recommended to use. So it's nice that this guy has 4. It does support PoE, power over Ethernet input on what's labeled as the Rio port. It's also got 12 volt. You can wire 12 volts straight to the radio. If you've got PoE coming in, that can also pass out of the 2 auxiliary ports there. So for teams that are running, let's say 1 or 2 limelights or other type of cameras that are going to take, that can be powered over PoE, this is a really nice solution that you don't have to have separate PoE injectors on your robot. It is recommended by Vivid Hosting that you mount this to something metal on your robot. The casing is metal, but it gets warm with the radio that's running in there. So prior to the first championships, they recommended all the teams you have a metal plate or something that you're going to mount this to help dissipate that heat on your robot. They also have some information on the Vivid Hosting website. They show some really nice graphics about the RF, the radio frequency patterns of the radio, and they've got some recommendations about how to mount that. So they'll show you like basically mounting it sideways like this, somewhere facing out of your robot is the recommended mounting method. There's also some other ones they show of like mounting it flat, and just some recommendations in there, like for example, if you're a team that's got control system on the bottom, a brain pan, don't mount it upside down, pointed down towards the ground. That will have some difficulties maintaining a good connection to the field. It's got some status lights on it, pretty typical stuff for just giving FTAs or teams an opportunity to see what's going on. Another cool feature, so this supports, it's got Wi-Fi 2.4 gigahertz, which is what the current radio has, but this also supports Wi-Fi 6E. And so Wi-Fi 6E runs at 6 gigahertz. The previous radio only went up to 5 gigahertz. And so what does this mean? 6E, 6 gigahertz, is going to provide faster data speeds, so hopefully provide teams more bandwidth, more opportunity to stream cameras, other data back to the driver station. And also there's less interference. You think about your cell phone, your computers, like all the devices, I'm sure we can all think of a time where at a competition, the field staff said to say, hey teams, turn off your hotspots because it's messing up the field. This should help alleviate some of those concerns. Running at 6 gigahertz, there's just many fewer devices running at that. They also have some information about running this at home. There's Vivid Hosting is going to be offering their own access point that could be used for like more, more robust rollouts. But you can also use a second Vivid Hosting radio if you wanted to set one up as an access point. So maybe if you're doing like a practice event, or you just want to simulate as best as possible the real field environment, set one of these up as your field radio. You have one on your robot. That's going to allow it to run over that 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi 6E and be able to get the same kind of download or bandwidth data transfer speeds. It does still have the 2.4 gigahertz, so you can still run this just in an access point mode like you would with your current radios today. All right, so that's the new radio. We'll have ours. I can have it after we're done here to take a look if you're interested. We also have so we'll touch now on the new control system. So FRC had put out an RFP, or request for proposal, basically to any company saying, hey, we are going to have a new robot controller. Companies can come bid for the design and for the selection of this controller. One of the cool things is that it's for both FTC and FRC. So today, those two programs have separate robot controllers. It makes it a little challenging for students transferring through the programs, right? They got to learn a whole new control system if they go from FTC to FRC. Makes it harder for teams to support. You got different hardware. So this will be really nice. You can share the same controller. Students learning how to program, how to wire, how to work with one system can very easily migrate to the other. In the RFP, it does say that it's guaranteed for 2027 through 2030. They say ideally longer. We saw the Robo Rio was first launched in 2015, and it'll be used through 2026, so a little over 10 years there. My guess is that this will be around longer than just that 2030 minimum timeframe. It's going to be available, just the timing of it, and I'll touch on that a little bit more, but available by fall of 26. All the like design, testing, everything's got to be done so that they can mass produce these, get it into the kit of parts for teams. The RFP was just recently closed, so that opened up in November and just closed at the end of May. They actually were supposed to have their decision already made by this point, but blog post just came out, I think earlier this week, saying that they needed a little bit more time, which is a good thing. We want FRC to vet this out, make sure that whatever they pick for the control system is going to be good for teams. It's going to be well supported. There's going to be good supply of it. We want them to take their time. Um, Yes, I forget the exact number, but I want to say it was north of 15 or 20 different companies that submitted proposals for it. So that is a cool part of the RFP is that it's not just first saying, okay, these three suppliers, like what can you guys come up with? It's open to anyone. So this could be a brand new company that really hasn't been featured before in first. If they come out with a strong hardware, software support proposal, that could be our new control system. So there's two main components in the RFP. The MRC, the mobile robot controller, aka the brain of it, and then essentially the FTC version of the power distribution. It's the low current one. So they specifically call out these other components that are not part of the RFP. It's not, I'd say it's not required for the company submitting for this to supply it. My guess is that some of the companies that bid on the RFP did also offer some options for this, right? If you are designing the main controller, you may want to offer the power delivery, whatever the power distribution board is. You might want to design your own that marries to it nicely. But all these other parts are not in there. So really the crux of it is, and for the FRC world, is the MRC, the robot controller. Basically, today it's the RoboRio and the Rev Control Hub. I think there's other FTC legal hubs as well, but those are kind of the two core ones. So I pulled out a couple highlights. The RFP, that's public, so anybody can go out there and check that out. It's, I don't know if I'd say an interesting read. Depends on your level of interesting. It's like, uh, you know, 30, 40 plus pages. And there's like 45 different, like all these line item requirements. If you're an engineer, you do this stuff all day long. Your eyes glaze over. But I pulled out a couple that were interesting to me and I think interesting to teams. So just like at the very beginning, first calls out, they want to minimize the complexity, setup time, cost, size, fragility. They want this to be cost effective for teams, robust, and it doesn't take 10 hours to set it up. For programming languages, C++, Java, Python are the required languages. They have also stated that a graphical programming language is preferred, so something like Scratch probably. I would assume that's more geared towards the FTC world than FRC. Tool-free wiring, so like lever locks. Think the Rev power distribution hub that's got all the lever locks. You don't need to be like, where's the Wago screwdriver that I'm always missing to try to get in there, or like little teeny tiny ones. Or pre-made cables that teams could have where it's just you plug it in and it works. Reverse polarity protection, always a plus. I don't care how good of a team you are, we do it all the time. You go, oops, wired it backwards. You don't want that to blow up your brand new shiny controller. Um, the processor inside, they are scaling that up from what's in the RoboRio today. So 64-bit instead of 32-bit, at least 1 gigahertz, minimum dual core, preferred quad core, minimum 4 gigs of RAM. They want this to have some horsepower to it. As everyone's seeing, right, with April tags, everything else, we're doing more and more and more with our robots. Teams are having to put all these different co-processors on there, trying to at least make sure that your core robot controller can support some of these functions. Speaking of April tags, they do call out specifically in the RFP that it must support 30 frames per second, 640 by 480 April tag tracking on the main controller while you're also running your other robot code. So that teams aren't forced to have a separate Limelight or Raspberry Pi or something like that to do the April tag processing. Another big one is that with just more and more devices going on the CAN networks between motor controllers, encoders, time of flight sensors, our CAN buses are getting more and more busy and full. So on this, it's a minimum of 2. Right now the RoboRio only has 1, and if you want to add more, you have to get a Canivore, is essentially the only USB to CAN device available. So at least 2 for preferred, and having them as CAN FD. And the CAN FD is just it's a newer spec and it's faster version of CAN. So it allows you to hook up more devices, and you're not going to max out your CAN utilization. So that's a really big one. Teams can start to like split parts of the robot. Maybe you run one CAN bus as your drivetrain, one CAN bus as your superstructure, maybe one's your sensors. Um, it's nice for teams. And then their target cost is less than 450 for the MRC itself. So that is pretty in line with what the Robo Rio is today. Trying to keep it so it's not $1,000 controller and making it cost prohibitive for teams to get a second controller or just to get one up and going. So a little bit about the RFP schedule. So as I mentioned, it was published in November. Companies had a little over 6 months to get their proposals into first. That just closed at the end of May. Their selection was supposed to be end of June, and as we talked about, that got pushed to the end of July. So per first blog post, it should be by the end of this month, so in the next week or two, that we'll be finding this out. Then they'll be going into alpha testing with teams. Think like 15 is what they called out. So small number of teams next summer, and then the following summer, the following fall would be beta testing with maybe 100 teams is what they've stated. So they do have a planned out of getting controllers, doing preliminary testing, getting a little bit bigger pool of testing, and then making sure that it's available for mass production in late 2026, getting the kit of parts for all teams to use starting in 2027. All right, so what does that mean for teams? So on the radio side, the Vivid hosting radio will be used by first next year. So my assumption is that all teams are going to get one of these in their kit of parts, since it is a new control system item that's going to be required for all teams. Your current radios, the OM5P, likely you could still use those at home if you've got a second drivetrain going. If you just want to put it in access point mode, use it for driver practice, but you won't be able to bring it to competition and use it. So just I guess my recommendation, unless you've got like old robots that you want to use for demos or drive practice, I wouldn't go out and buy new OM5P radios this summer, just because they're already next year going to be not used in competition. And then on the robot controller side, so recapping that the new controller will be here for the 2027 competition season. All the teams will certainly get one in their kit of parts. That's called out in the RFP. The Robo Rio will likely no longer be supported there. If you've got one on your robot, it'll probably still work. Teams still ran the C Rio, the previous controller from the Robo Rio, for a couple years afterwards at home, just practicing, doing whatever. But you won't be able to get like new firmware or new updates for it. If you're a team that maybe gets a new controller each year, or you only have one, you want to get a second for your other robot, still makes sense in the next year or two. But don't go to like get the Costco pack and bulk up and be ready for like 10 years on this. It's only going to be for the next 2 years that you're going to need this for competition. And then just watch out for those first blog posts. As I mentioned, the end of this month, in a couple weeks, they'll be announcing what that new controller is. As the alpha testing goes on next summer, I'm sure there's going to be white papers, test reports, videos, and pictures of teams testing this controller on their robots. So just keep an eye out for that. It's good to get familiar with that ahead of time before the controller's in your hands in the kit of parts and it's kickoff and you're trying to figure out this new controller and also a new game at that time. Yes?
So what are the things that come through the Robo Rio what kind of software libraries?
Yes.
As part of rolling out the hardware, are they going to develop some software libraries as well?
Yes. So as part of the RFP, does talk about the software. They are strongly suggesting that any of the companies that are like pitching for this would be working with WPI-lib. It would be a similar software support as we have today. A couple years ago, FRC had moved where instead of WPI-lib managing all the libraries, each of the vendors, that's where you have to manage it. So when you buy a Rev part, you got to get the Rev API in. If you buy across the road electronics, you got to get their library. So that will be pushed out, and all of the vendors will have to provide new software libraries as well. And I'm sure they will get alpha or beta test units ahead of time so that they can develop their libraries, make sure it's running on that hardware well. Yes, so I know that that has been on Chief Delphi. Some of the discussions about the new controller LabVIEW has been brought up. I my guess is unless National Instruments gets the controller contract again, my guess is that LabVIEW would be out. So I know it's a small percentage, but there are teams that do still run LabVIEW. And yes, I would hopefully by making the announcement right now and basically 2 years in advance of rolling out, that does give those teams some runway to start training on one of the supported languages. All right, that's all I have. We already had some questions. Any other questions you guys have right away? Yeah.
You know, like right now on our RoboReel, we have we've used Navex boards for several years
Mhm.
now. I haven't been paying that close of attention to the new controller request for quotes.
Mhm.
Like that. Is there any? Does anybody know if there's any verbiage of sensors like that?
Sure.
They put that it had to have that port on it.
It's I know that they called out for having an expansion port. I don't recall if it's the same footprint as what it is. So that would be something to check. I do know that there is. I didn't mention it on the highlights, but in the RFP there is requirements for having an IMU built into the new controller. So I will be interested to see if that may be able to replace some of, yeah, if you have to use the Navex or a Pigeon or another, IMU for Swerve or something else, could potentially replace that.
They also put that you won't need to use an SSD card for memory.
Yes.
They had specifically called that out.
Yes, SD card will be there.
The SD card there will be optional.
Yes, it will be there for like logging data or for team usage of if you want to put configurations or something on it, but that there will be installed memory in every unit that you can load your software on and not have to go run out and try to reseat the SD card as the FTA is pointing his finger at you because the match didn't start because your robot didn't boot up. So that'll be nice. Yes. Excellent. Any other quick questions here? Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much. If you have other questions, flag me down throughout the weekend, but otherwise, thank you for coming.